Hey, everybody. Welcome to Adapter Parish, episode 101, which is, appropriately enough, all about the Disney classic 101 Dalmatians. But before the puppies arrive, let's talk about our next episode. And it's time for another spectacular. It's been almost 4 years since we released the first episode of this show, and it's time for us to look back on how year 4 has treated us. We'll look at the best that this batch of adaptations has had to offer and the worst. I anticipate a very relaxed, very chill affair, and we hope you enjoy it. That'll be out in 2 weeks on Tuesday, October 5th. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 101, The 101 Dalmatians. Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Ari Lipshaw, and this is a short episode that's not Les Mis.
It's amazing.
I say short. We haven't recorded it yet, so we don't know.
Welcome to episode 101. And what else could we do?
Look how whimsical we are.
What else could we have done?
What whimsy. The 101 Dalmatians.
It's a different title every time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's what do you want? Do you want the 101 Dalmatians? Do you want 101 Dalmatians? Do you want 101 Dalmatians?
101 Dalmatians. Take your pick. Well, we have this book here that I got out of the library, and at first I was worried that it was like, the novelization or something, because on the front it says 101 Dalmatians, and it has sort of, I don't know, a more modern interpretation, I guess, of Cruella de Vil on the front cover. But then I did notice on the side it does say The 101 Dalmatians. And it is the original novel by Dodie Smith, who also wrote I Capture the Castle, which is like one of my favorite books and something I want to do for the show one day.
That's come up before.
Yeah.
Give me a quick rundown on I Capture the Castle, because I know nothing about it other than there was a movie.
Yeah.
And Mark Blucas was in it.
Was he?
People know who Mark Blucas is.
I Capture the Castle.
You know who Tell people who Mark Blucas is.
He was like the worst character on Buffy.
Riley was not the worst character.
Let's see who it was. I Capture the Castle is a coming-of-age novel about a young girl growing up with no mother in a very eccentric family.
I was looking up. I'm so sorry I went somewhere for a second because I wanted to find out if I was right, and Mark Blucas is in it. This is quite a cast, this movie.
Yeah.
Well, because Romola Garai is in it.
Yep, she's the main character.
Henry Thomas is in it.
Uh-huh.
You know what everyone knows Henry Thomas from.
Yeah. Moby Dick.
Yeah, the Patrick Stewart Moby Dick.
Yeah.
That's clearly the most famous thing. Man, Rose Byrne, Bill Nighy, Mark Blucas, obviously. Henry Cavill. Did you know Superman's in this?
Nope, didn't know that.
Sinead Cusack. Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
There's some good people in this.
To be, for full transparency, the reason we haven't done it is because there's only the one adaptation and I think a radio play somewhere, and we really have kind of been buckling down on trying to not do straight book-to-movie adaptations. We've talked about this before, among other reasons being there are a lot of podcasts that do book-to-movie adaptations, and we just don't want the competition. We do something we think that no one else does.
Why would we compete with people who might be better at this than us?
Yeah, why would we? Well, someone sent me a link the other day, and they were like, uh-oh, you're in trouble, and someone had started a new book-to-movie podcast, and their very first episode was going to be about Twilight, and I was like...
Are we in trouble?
I mean, I'm sure their show is very good, but it does not sound like they are inhabiting the same space that we feel that we inhabit.
I'm going to speak something right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something right now. I'm going to talk something right now that... You know what just came to me, and this is how I feel about Twilight.
Yeah.
I will do Twilight.
Yeah.
For patrons.
Yeah, maybe.
Like we don't like the Patreon system is not like the main reason we do this. It's just a nice thing, and it like covers the cost of the show, which is delightful, and we like doing the bonus show. But I've never been like, if you want me to do that, you need to pay me to do that.
Yeah. What you're saying is it's not like you couldn't pay me to do it, but it's like you have to pay me to do it.
You have to pay me to do Twilight.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other reaction that I had to someone sending me this. I don't know whose show this was. It may have been someone well known. I'm not sure. But the other reaction I had was like, yeah, they've done one episode. Like, catch me when they've done 101 episodes. Because it's not an easy matter. Like, anyone can start a podcast. I think, not to put ourselves up on too high a pedestal.
I mean, you're the one doing this right now. I'm not part of this.
I'm just saying anyone can start a podcast. It's very easy to start a podcast, but I think it's a little bit more challenging to keep at it. Just as with anything. I mean, listen, there are many things that I've started and not finished. Like, see my many unfinished bullet journals sitting on the shelf. But like, I'm just saying, like, I feel like we've had a certain perseverance with this show.
I think we've held each other accountable.
Yeah.
I think left to our own devices, I don't know that either of us would have gotten this far.
Oh, I would not have. Absolutely. I would have quit long ago. The other thing I will say, speaking of like things we do for the Patreon, is we just did an experiment. This is like my little plug for becoming a patron if you so choose. We just did a little experiment with doing like live reacts to something. And I had so much fun. It was like one of my favorite things we've ever done. And I think it came out okay. So
it came out okay.
It came out okay.
We have received no feedback.
So
maybe it did.
We just released it literally today. And it goes to 6 people. So it's fine. So that is the kind of thing that I'm very interested in doing some more of in the future. Although I believe I think the format of this show will certainly always remain the same. But I definitely want to do more like commentary tracks to things.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to our show. Let's talk about 101 Dalmatians. So this was written by Dodie Smith, who you were just talking about. Did you know this was originally serialized?
I did not know that.
In Woman's Day as The Great Dog Robbery, serialized story, and then collected into a book. It was published in 1956. Obviously, like, Disney got it and was like, this is great. We got to make a movie. Apparently, she said something about how that was her dream. Like, that was that it would be adapted into a Disney movie.
Oh, interesting.
Which, like, fair. That makes sense.
So unlike P.L. Travers, she actually wanted to be purchased by Disney.
Yeah, apparently she even said that their movie was like an improvement on her story.
It's a pretty good movie.
Which here's the deal, whether that's true or not, like that's a really nice thing for an author to say.
That's very sweet.
That's super sweet.
That's very sweet. And you don't hear that often, especially from authors who have had their books adapted by Disney movies.
Yeah. But like this is a big thing because I am assuming I'm not the only person who my only context for 101 Dalmatians is the Disney movie.
Yeah.
Like, I never actually even saw the remake because, and we were talking about this when we were watching it, that like 1996 was this weird era for us in the age we were at where like, that was not a movie I was going to see.
Yeah.
Like at 13, I wasn't going to see a 101 Dalmatians remake.
Yeah. I wasn't going to see like a little kid's movie.
Even though like you had younger brothers.
Yeah.
And maybe like a couple of years later you would have been cool with it. But like when you're 12 or 13, you're like, no, I'm too cool for that.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly wasn't going to go to the theater to see it, I guess. Who
wants to play Pogs?
Yeah. No, Pogs were, by the time I was 12, we were not doing Pogs. Pogs were a 5th grade thing and 5th grade only, and then they got banned in school, so I don't think they didn't carry over to middle school.
I kept my Pogs under my slap bracelets. Anyway,
Pogs and slap bracelets were like 5 years apart because I've such a clear memory.
Who remembers GAC?
Oh,
we
boy.
were just talking about GAC yesterday.
Yeah.
That was a thing.
That was a thing.
Anyway, getting back to 101 Dalmatians. So this book came out in 1956. I'd never read it before. In the same way where I think there's a lot of people who are like me where your only context is the movie, I'm assuming there are also a lot of people where you have read the book before. And I mean, I think we can get it out of the way. Maybe this is not really like a spoiler at this point, but it is a real fun book.
Super fun.
I really enjoyed it, so I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, because we had picked up a copy from the library, which sometimes it's hard for us to just have one copy, but obviously it is a children's book.
It is a book for children.
And it is 177 pages long. So I had read it sort of in an evening, and I gave it to you, and I was like, "You're actually really gonna like this.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna struggle through this. I think you're gonna enjoy it."
Back of the book?
Yeah.
Puppies and more puppies. How will they all escape the evil Cruella de Vil? When the Dearly's Dalmatians have their first litter of puppies, 15 in all, everyone is delighted. But their joy is shattered when the pups are kidnapped. The humans don't have a clue as to who the culprit is, but the smartest dogs in London are on the case and on the trail of the fur-loving Cruella de Vil, who will stop at nothing to have a Dalmatian fur coat. I mean...
There it is.
Like...
She likes
it.
fur.
That's
she wants
it. That's the whole
Dalmatian fur
thing.
coat. It was more about, and now having watched the movie again, it makes more sense to me. But it was more about the journey. It was more about the journey than the destination, shall we say?
Yeah.
Like it was more about the journey of the parents to get to the children than the trials and tribulations they went through after they got the puppies. It was only like a little while before they got back, and also like. the peril didn't start for a really long time. Like there was a lot of build up to like the two humans had to meet and the dogs had to meet and they got married and there was a whole bunch about
Wait,
that.
who got married?
The humans got married
And the dogs got married.
and the dogs
it's adorable.
got married.
I mean, it's in the Disney movie, but it's not as
explicit.
Here's the thing: the way Smith describes it in the book is adorable.
Yeah.
And also, I love the way that she makes some really great decisions for how to communicate things in a kid's book.
Yeah.
So, for example, dogs, just so you know, boys and girls, just so you know, when dogs have puppies, they're married.
Yeah.
These dogs get married
They are
first.
married. It's very important to understand because there's another dog that is sort of like, not to bring Les Mis into it, but it's sort of the Fantine of the story.
A bit.
And she was abandoned and they found her on the side of the road and it seemed like she had recently had puppies, but they didn't know where the puppies were.
Oh, and she was lost.
And
And so they name her, and they name her something that has to do with Perdita.
Yeah.
Perdita.
Well, Perdita.
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 Is it Perdita?
It is in Shakespeare.
Which they do reference
Perdita,
specifically in the story.
But in the movie they do say Perdita.
What is Perdita from?
It's from The Winter's Tale, which is a play that you have seen.
This is the second time this has happened in like the last 2 weeks where I've asked you, hey, that Shakespeare reference, what's that from? And you're like, it's from The Winter's Tale. I directed it. You fucking saw it.
You asshole.
You piece of garbage.
And I even asked you
Why
the
is
other
the
day.
father of my child a piece of garbage?
I don't know why I make the choices that I make.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, Perdita's a lost dog.
She's a lost. I guess we'll say Perdita for the purposes of this. It's just like she tells her story. She was kind of a wayward youth, and she met this dog. But Dodie Smith wants to be very clear, when she met this gentleman dog, that they did go off into the woods and were married by some other dog that lived in the woods.
No,
when they had their encounter, and then he was taken away by his owners.
Yeah, there's nothing about like who married them. She was just like, no, she met this dog. They went off into the woods. They were married.
I thought it said like we got married by like a chipmunk or something.
I don't remember that. I just remember they went into the woods and got married. While you're looking that up, let me back up for a second. So it's hard to talk about the book because the thing I want to do is I want to talk about it in terms of the Disney movie. So like I want to talk about how, like you think that Perdita she's not actually Pongo's lady. He has a different lady whose name Mrs., which is what you wouldn't expect. Like, it's hard for me to talk about it not in terms of you only know the Disney movie. So I do apologize to everyone who knows the book really well. That's kind of the frame of reference I have. What did you find?
Okay, you are right, but I do want to read some of this out because it is very sweet and I think gives some color to how this book is written because the tone is a little bit different from the Disney movie.
This is one of the few, I'll say this too, like this is one of the few books where I was taking notes on specific like passages from the book because the writing is quite delightful.
Yeah. So this is talking about Perdita. A time came when she felt a great desire to marry, but no marriage was arranged for her, and as the farm was over a mile from any village, no dog had come courting her, so one day she set out to find a husband for herself. Her way to the village lay across the common, where she saw a large, handsome car which had been driven onto the grass. A group of people were having a picnic, and with them was a superb, liver-spotted Dalmatian. It was love at first sight. Without even bothering to eat the chicken, he came bounding to her, and they were away into a wood together before anyone could stop them. Here they made swift arrangements for their marriage, promising to love each other always. Then the happy husband told his wife she must of course come and live with him and led her back to the common. But as they reached it, along came the farmer Perdita lived with in his rattling old car. He dragged her into it, and the picnic party bundled her husband into their car. Both dogs struggled and howled, but it was useless. The cars drove off in opposite directions. 9 weeks after her marriage, Perdita had 8 puppies.
Amazing.
Like the dogs ran away and humped in the woods.
So many things to talk about, not least of which is like this reminds me of one of my favorite pieces of literature from the last 100 years of American media, the movie Office Space.
Yeah.
But I love how I think people might know what I'm talking about, but when Milton's on the phone and he's talking about how there were squirrels outside
And they were married.
And they were married, which is clearly like the only way that he can describe squirrels humping.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm here for it. This is great. So anyway, getting back to it, we talk about like the 2 Dalmatians. Well, the 2 Dalmatians are Pongo and Mrs.
Yes.
Who is his wife.
His wife.
And they
His
have
lady wife.
their owners, the Dearleys. And so much stuff. It's weirdly like exactly the same as the Disney movie, but also different in terms of like character names and stuff like that. So here were the things that I didn't expect. So at the beginning of the story, Pongo is with his daddy,
Mr. Dearly.
Mr. Dearly, and Mrs. is with her lady, Anita. And they, all these crazy kids hook up.
Yep.
But here was some stuff I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting the nannies.
Yeah.
So each of them brought a nanny to the relationship.
Yeah.
It was nanny cook and nanny butler.
Yeah.
And there's a whole conversation where they decide, well, it would be crazy if we actually were your cook and your butler.
Yeah.
So like nanny butler gets herself a smart suit and a cap and everything.
And then like she like wears it with an apron because she thinks that's funny, but she wears like a butler's pantsuit.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Dodie Smith writes the Dearleys falling in love and becoming a couple.
Yeah.
She writes Pongo and Mrs. falling in love and becoming a couple. She writes Nanny Cook and Nanny Butler falling in love and becoming a couple. The only difference is it's never called out explicitly.
Sure.
And I understand. We're sitting here in 2021. We're sitting here as the two people we are with the context that we have. Yes, I want this to be the case. I want this to be this really weird kind of like low-key progressive book. And I want that for two reasons.
Yeah.
One, it delights me, and I love that the nannies are a couple, and I just imagine that they have quote-unquote separate bedrooms.
Yeah.
But for some reason, Nanny Cook's bedroom is always spotless, and Nanny Butler's bedroom is always very messy.
Did it say that?
No, this is what I am imagining.
This is your headcanon.
This is from my head. So that's the one reason. The one reason I want it is because it delights me. The second reason that I want it is because it allows me to feel better about so much of the like 1950s gender essentialist stuff that like I'm not even mad about.
Yeah.
But the book is full of stuff like that because it is from a different time.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I really think maybe supports your theory that Dodie Smith was being a little bit naughty is that.
Well, not naughty.
Yeah.
But maybe a little subversive. Let's call it subversive.
A little subversive is that it does seem like once Perdita is introduced to the couple of Pongo and Mrs., that she does seem to become the third person in their relationship. Like, so Mrs. has these puppies, and Perdita had puppies. And because Mrs. had 15 puppies, that's really too many puppies for one dog to take care of. So they give some of them to Perdita for her to take care of, and she loves to wash them.
There's like a whole thing in the book where they need another dog to nurse, so they're constantly on the lookout for another dog.
Yes,
and then finally Anita is driving down the street, and she sees this poor liver-spotted. I also didn't know liver-spotted Dalmatians were the ones with the brown spots.
The brown spots, yeah.
I learned a thing when we did this.
Yeah.
So she finds this sad dog that is lost, and they bring her home, and they name her Perdita, as you say.
Yeah.
And there's way more in the book about the logistics of having another dog nurse some of the puppies.
Yeah. There's so much about it, and that's not in the Disney movie, like even a little.
Not
There's
even
only
a little.
2 adult Dalmatians. But anyway.
Mrs. is cut from the story.
Yes. Well, Mrs.
of?
and Perdita are kind of merged, I suppose.
I mean, Perdita and Perdita is a better name than Mrs.
But anyway, like then they try to keep them apart because they're like, well, if Perdita and Mrs. get together, they're going to be jealous about the puppies and they'll fight. And the dogs, of course, know better, right? The dogs want to be together. So at one point they like arrange to knock down the barrier between them, and then they can't tell whose puppies are whose, and then everybody just they see that they're all happy together, and everybody just lives together kind of from then on.
Like, let's make one thing clear. Pongo is the smartest dog in the world.
Smart, at least in his own mind.
Well, but he kind of deserves the moniker. Like, he definitely believes he deserves it, but he also kind of does deserve it. He is a incredibly smart dog.
Sure.
And in the context of the story, the reality of the story, dogs understand everything we say. They perfectly understand people, and they look at us, and just the way we look at dogs and go, I wish you understood me. They look at us and go, we wish you understood us.
Yes.
But Pongo's very smart, and he breaks the the door
he
down.
Manages the whole thing.
They get all together, and it's great. So they're in this beautiful kind of poly relationship,
which is it is, and at one point
emotionally poly.
Well, I mean we're not given to understand because at one point it does say like Pongo didn't really feel like he had 2 wives, but he did feel like the puppies had 2 mothers, which is very sweet. But there's sort of he didn't really feel that way, but maybe he did a little bit.
So I feel like Dodie Smith is doing this thing where she's like skirting with kind of subversive and progressive relationships, but always kind of bringing it back to the norm, because the thing that happens when they find all the puppies. So, okay, here's the quick version for anyone who doesn't know the basic story of 101 Dalmatians. Cruella de Vil is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
She likes turning animals into clothing. which in and of itself doesn't bother me as much as she's just shitty about it.
She's not very nice.
And so anyway, she buys like 85 puppies, but she needs 100 of them. So she steals Pongo and Mrs.'s 15 puppies and puts them in her mansion. Hell Hall. And then she's going to have her guys kill and skin all the puppies. And then she's going to have her husband, who's a furrier, turn them into a coat.
Yeah.
So
Jodie Smith is not subtle with names, by the way. Cruella DeVille.
We're gonna get to. I want to
lives in Hell Hall.
Like, hang on. We need to hold off on Cruella because I want to spend the time that she deserves on her because she, as I say, she deserves it. So that's the story. And Pongo and Mrs. It's so hard for me not to say Pongo and Perdita
because it rolls off the tongue so well.
And it's my entire life.
Right.
The two dogs are Pongo and Perdita.
Right. Pongo and Mrs.
Pongo and Mrs. escape. They leave Perdita with the Dearlys, and they go because they've communicated with all the other dogs in the world because there's this thing called the Twilight Barking, or the Starlight... Twilight Barking.
Yeah.
It's the Twilight Barking. I got confused for a second because there's a sequel to the book called The Starlight Barking, which we're going to get to.
We're going to get to in a minute.
And I'm really excited about it. So the book follows Pongo and Mrs. Like, I feel like the puppies get kidnapped super, super early in the book by Cruella. There's this thing called the Twilight Barking. It's how all dogs communicate. They communicate out. They find out where the puppies are. They find out they're in Suffolk. And so what they need to do is they need to get there. So it's super early on in the book that Pongo and Mrs. get away from the Dearlys to go find their puppies. We follow them for pretty much the whole book. We don't know anything about the puppies for a really long time. Like, we find out a little bit about what's going on with them, but we don't follow other characters. We're just following Pongo and Mrs. as they're having adventures and meeting new dogs and almost getting kidnapped, dog-napped, I guess. Then they finally find the puppies, then they get away, and they have their whole adventure getting home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, the basic structure of it is the same as the Disney movie, but we're with Pongo and Mrs. the whole time.
Yeah.
It's their story. So I say all of that to say, all of these other puppies were bought legally.
Yeah.
The 15 puppies were the only ones who were stolen. And like every newspaper in the country is talking about them. It's a whole big thing. So Perdita's puppies are in that group.
Right.
So when they get back home, she's like, oh my God, my puppies.
Yes.
And then after what happens? So they all move into Hell Hall at the end.
Yeah, they somehow acquire Hell Hall and they make it into, Mr. Dearly has a lot of money.
He is, quote unquote, a financial wizard. And one of the things he did is he eliminated the national debt of England. And he has a lifelong tax exemption.
Yeah, which apparently makes him rich.
Yep. I think it's important to say that, like, this isn't really the focus of the book. And it's important to say because it is going to come up when we talk about something later. That, like, at no point are you given to wonder about how they can take care of 100 Dalmatians, how they can afford to buy Hell Hall. I guess it's pretty cheap because it's a rat hole.
Yeah.
And they fix it up. But they figure out how to have an estate where they can have all of the Dalmatians running around. Everything's great. And after they've done that, Perdita's husband's owners, or pets, as they're referred to in the book,
as they call them,
find out about this whole thing, and they're like, "We want to. This is the dog that he ran off into the woods and got married with." How they could possibly
know this, I do not know.
I have no idea, but they bring him. So by the end of the story, like I say, even though there are these kind of progressive, subversive things, everything does kind of come back to the mean. By the end, Pongo and Mrs. are a couple with their puppies, and there's all these other puppies, and Perdita has her puppies and has her husband. So there are these two distinct family units.
Have I ever gotten into my theory on the show about how tragedy is revolutionary but comedy is reactionary?
No, go for it. That sounds great.
I mean, it's just basically
Let me pull up a chair.
What you're saying, which is that the point of a tragedy is the world breaks apart and is not mended.
Mm-hmm.
But the point of a comedy is that everything comes back together to the way that it was.
Oh, yeah.
So no matter how subversive you got this is mostly applies to Shakespeare, but I think everything. For example, like Shakespeare's comedies, we have like women dressing as men and like, people doing crazy things. And we have all sorts of like funny things going on in the bedroom.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Yeah.
That maybe is I'm kind of jumping ahead.
Yeah.
Are there any of those plays that end with any of those women going, you know what? I think I'm going to keep dressing this way.
No, and that's exactly what I was going to say. It never happens. It all comes back. Comedy returns to the status quo.
Yeah.
Everybody ends up married and happy, and the world is mended as opposed to the world being fractured.
I love it.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Anyway, this is what it made me think
So
of.
that's kind of the bones of it. So, like, we're talking about the things that are different. Pongo and Mrs. Perdita is this third character. She is the third wheel. And it's nice to know, you know what? It's nice to know the entire time that they're off on their adventure that there is a nice Dalmatian at home with the Dearlys taking care of them.
That's right.
Isn't there?
Yeah, they're not alone on Christmas. Like, there is a nice Dalmatian there to try to make them feel better.
Yeah, I feel like all of the other animal characters are really well drawn out. There were some things that I found delightful. Like, I still remember Tibbs the cat.
Tibbs the cat.
It's a lady in the book.
Yeah, as it should be.
Yeah,
And there's what is it? The Colonel, the dog.
There's the Colonel.
There's the old Great Dane.
Mm-hmm. There's Tommy.
There's Tommy the baby, who's very sweet, and he's not quite 2, but he does help them by lending them his cart.
And it's delightful. And the entire time I was thinking of Calvin.
Yes.
Because he is also a cute child who is not quite 2.
Yes. And there is the runt of the litter, the cad pig. She's the one that almost dies at birth and then is revived.
Mm-hmm.
So she is the name the cad pig did not really translate to the Disney movie.
Nope.
I think it became Lucky and also a boy.
Well, Lucky's in the book too.
Yeah.
They kind of conflate them a little bit.
Yeah.
I was reading something that was like, Cad Pig is not in the movie.
Yes.
They never say they never say, we don't have a single puppy named the Cad Pig.
Yes.
They never say that, so maybe one of the other puppies is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the little puppy that dies is revived is Lucky in the movie.
And like the moment has arrived. Do you want to talk about Cruella de Vil?
Yeah, I mean, I only have 2 things left to talk about with the book. I
Okay.
want to talk about Cruella, and I want to talk about the writing.
Okay, great.
Which do you think we should talk about first?
Let's talk about Cruella first.
Let's talk about Cruella first. This character, it's this thing that keeps happening to us where we know the later version and then we read the original. And, sometimes the character just doesn't feel like the character that we know. It
Yep.
feels like a different version. And you wonder, oh, I can see how they changed her. She wasn't really like that, or he wasn't really like that. And, maybe the new one was better. Or, oh, no, the one from the book is better. Cruella de Vil walks off the page fully formed.
Yeah.
And I could absolutely understand anyone at Disney looking at her. Like, I could just imagine Walt Disney reading this book and giving him to a guy named Bill Peet, who ended up writing the movie, just going like, so just so you know,
This is perfect.
I give you full license to change things, but you need to understand Cruella de Vil is perfect. And you should not change her at all. She is exactly as she is in the movie. But she's a perfectly drawn character.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
I mean, even down to her black and white hair, like that's in the book. And Mr. Dearly even says to Anita at one point, like, did she have that black and white hair at school? And he's just like, oh yeah, she did. Yeah, she had like one black braid and one white braid. It was weird.
Mm-hmm. Like the stuff that's different is kind of her situation because she
Yes.
does have her husband who
Yes.
doesn't make it to the movie.
That's right.
Mr. DeVille,
Yes.
who is no, he's Mr. DeVille because he took her name.
He took her name.
Right?
Yes.
But she also has a Persian cat that's amazing. And this is the other thing I would like. I just think it's important to talk about the fact that like Cruella's amazing. She is an incredible character. She is terrifying. She deserves to live for 100 years in different forms of media. I haven't seen the new movie, but I've heard it's a heck of a thing.
Now you're in favor of it, no matter what.
I guess I'm in favor of it on paper. Like, I'm in favor of people adapting this character and bringing her into other stuff. I'm not saying the movie is good or bad because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I can't say that. But I think she's amazing. The writing, though, of the book, I just have some lines that made me think. I love how honest it was about dogs.
Yeah.
And how beautiful it was. So, like, for example, there is a line in the book where she's talking about the twilight barking.
Mm-hmm.
And she's talking about all the dogs communicating with each other. And she says that all the dogs knew about it. Dogs of almost every known breed, and a great many dogs of unknown breed, none the worse for that, and bright as buttons, which is delightful. And I love it. And I
feel very seen.
Like, I do think it makes sense in a kid's book to talk about dog breeds because you can talk about, like, oh, well, Great Danes, their characterization is like this,
They're
and Dalmatians
dogs,
are like
yeah.
this, and little dogs are like this. I am not personally super in favor of the world of dog breeding and purebreds. I like a mutt personally.
Thank you.
But I do like the way it acknowledges them.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. There is a thing in this that is specifically something we say about our dog Oscar constantly. So our dog Oscar constantly reminds us that he himself personally used to be a wolf. Constantly. Because he is the farthest thing you could get from a wolf.
Usually when he doesn't want to go out in the rain.
Yeah, I was a wolf, I used to be personally a wolf.
Personally, I would bite.
And there's a line in the book where Pongo says to her, like, we should never lose our liking for adventure, never forget our wild ancestry. And I was like, Oscar was literally sitting next to me when I was reading it. I was like, Oscar, they think they're wolves too. And he
he's
looked
like
up at
lying
me.
on the floor flat.
He's like, yes, I used to be a wolf.
I used to be a wolf.
Personally, I used to be a wolf. It's very cute the way she thinks, the way she writes about children. Because there's this thing where there's this kid who like throws shit at Mrs. and it's really shitty. And later she figures out, oh, bless me, she thought, he's just a small human who likes throwing things. His parents should buy him a ball.
Yeah.
Is very sweet.
Which is, I mean, also like good parenting on the part of like from all we see of Mrs., she's a very good mom.
Yeah.
And that is actually what we did do for Calvin when he was throwing stuff like books and like his wooden toys. We got all the soft toys.
We gathered them all up.
We gathered them all up and we put them in a bag and we said, Calvin, these are your soft toys, and if you want to throw something, you may throw your soft toys. So now if he ever starts to get frustrated and mad, we say, buddy, we don't throw hard toys, but do you want to throw some soft toys? And he'll go, yeah. And he'll go and throw his like soft toys and like an Angry Birds stuffy that we got in a Burger King Happy Meal and all kinds of things. So anyway, good parenting from that day to this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's good parenting, but that's what we chose to do.
We're doing our best.
We're doing our best.
So anyway, there's just one last thing. There's an entire aspect of this. I mentioned that Cruella has a cat. One of the things I love about this, and I don't know that she was necessarily being subversive when she wrote it this way, but it certainly was hard to read it without the context of the kind of things we grew up on, which is usually when there's a villain, the villain has a pet. The pet is an extension of the villain, right?
The pet is also an evil pet.
In this one, though, the cat hates Cruella.
Yeah.
And it is totally fine with her getting her shit fucked up. And there's literally a thing at the end where... okay, one of the dogs, there's a Staffordshire Terrier they're telling him about him, and they're telling him about Cruella, and he says, why not kill this Cruella, said the Staffordshire, and I'll help you. Let's make a date for it now. He's so excited for them to get together and kill her.
He's got the taste of blood in his mouth.
It's great. But then when they actually get back, they go past her house, and the cat comes out, and he's like, hey, she's not in right now, and there's like 100 of you.
Do you want to fuck shit up?
Do you want to fuck some shit up? Do you want to come in and tear apart all her clothes and like piss and shit everywhere?
And I love that Pongo's first reaction is, no, we couldn't.
Couldn't possibly.
And the puppies are like, yeah. And Mrs. is like, well,
couldn't we though?
Couldn't we?
And they do. There's an entire. It's like a whole chapter.
Everywhere. That's not explicitly in the book that they piss and shit everywhere.
There's puppies. I'm assuming there's 100 puppies. I'm assuming they're pissing and shitting.
It must smell so bad.
It's super fun. I mentioned before that there's like the gender essentialism. Like here's a thing that doesn't stick well with me at this point. Pongo's the smart one and Mrs. is kind of dumb.
Yeah, she's kind of ditzy.
There's a whole chapter where another dog is trying to teach her left from right. And
she just doesn't understand.
She just doesn't understand. She's like, I'm just not smart. And I don't know. It just didn't, I don't know how you felt about it.
Well, I think the funny thing is, I guess I didn't necessarily, yes, now that you say it, this is funny coming from me. Now that you say it, you're right. Like it's an uncomfortable gender thing. I kind of took it as a Dalmatian thing because I think Dalmatians aren't very smart.
Yeah, but Pongo as the man is very smart.
But that's unusual for a Dalmatian is what I'm saying.
I'm just saying.
Listen, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right.
I'm sure it was never something that crossed her mind that maybe it was the lady Dalmatian that was the smart one.
Yes, yeah. I guess I maybe just took it as a dig on Dalmatians more than on women.
I just think the book is kind of full of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I never read it to say like, oh man, this kid shouldn't read this. Like I actually think it's fine. But
it's fun. Yeah.
It brings up. Here's the thing. Like I would love for Calvin to read it when he's older, but then we'll also have a conversation about it.
Right.
Because I want to provide some context for some of the things in it.
That's right.
But I was delighted by it. How did you feel reading it? When was the last time you read it?
Oh, I hadn't read it for years, but like I had read it many times as a kid. Like there was a lot of stuff I remembered. I remembered specifically at the end, the part where they find Perdita's husband and he's like joining the family, but he's like kind of shy. And there's a part about how Mr. Dearly like knows how to kind of connect with him like man to man, and like there's a line about how he knows how to punch him, and it's like you can punch a dog just to kind of show that you're there, just not to harm him, just to kind of show, in a manly sense that you're there to support him. And I just remembered that about punching the dog properly. It's a heck of a thing.
It was a good book.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Before we move on to the Disney movie, which was made 5 years later, I do want to skip ahead to 1967 because there was a sequel to this book called The Starlight Barking.
Okay.
That is bonkers, and I am so excited to all I want to do is read a plot synopsis. We don't even have to talk about it. I asked you before, while I'm pulling it up, I asked you before to think about what it could possibly be about. Do you have any guesses?
Is it like a direct sequel, like with the same characters?
Direct sequel.
Okay.
Direct sequel, same characters.
I mean, I guess my assumption is they're all living at Hell Hall, and like maybe there's some other fiasco that like some other dog is in peril that they have to go and help in some way.
Oh, sweetie, that's so quaint that you would think the sequel's about that.
Okay.
Let me educate you.
Okay.
Someone out there knows what I'm about to say. Strap in, everybody. I'm going to try to do this as quick as I can. The Dearly family and most of the Dalmatians of the first book still live in Cruella de Vil's old manor house in Suffolk, as do many other Dalmatians and a married couple of white Persian cats, which I'm assuming one of them is Cruella's cat. Mr. Dearly has allowed some dogs to go to new masters, including giving Cadpig to the Prime Minister. One morning, the dogs find all other living things besides dogs cannot be wakened. No dog is hungry, thirsty, or weak. I just want everyone, sweetie, you need to respond verbally because the look on your face is not something anyone can see right now.
Okay.
Doors, gates, and machines operate on command, and the dogs are able to communicate via thought waves to others many miles away.
What?
Cadpig, now acting prime minister in the human's absence,
Wait.
orders her parents to come help her in London, where hundreds of dogs are arriving, awaiting her advice.
This is a fever dream.
The dogs discover they can, quote, swoosh or hover at tremendous speed over the ground.
Oh my
Some
God.
people call that flying. Pongo and Mrs. select a squad of 50 Dalmatians, including their adult sons Patch, Lucky, and Roly Poly. They swoosh to London and are escorted by police dogs to 10 Downing Street.
Okay.
Cadpig and her cabinet, who are all the human cabinet's dogs, hold a meeting with Pongo and Mrs. to decide what to do next. Roly Poly makes a friend of George, the foreign secretary's boxer, and the two set off on an adventure together, I believe to Paris. Two fox terriers hear the general, the Old English sheepdog, barking. He reveals he will soon be arriving with his owner's little son, Tommy, the farm tabby Mrs. Willow, and the female white Persian cat. So these are all characters from the first one.
Right.
These three are also awake thanks to being named, quote, honorary dogs after the event of the first book.
Okay.
Upon arrival in London, the white Persian cat suggests Cruella, now back in London, must be behind the mysterious sleeping. She leads a group of dogs to Cruella's house to kill her. However, Cruella and her husband are just as fast asleep as anyone else, and the animals see she is now obsessed with metallic plastics instead of fur coats. They spare her life and return to Downing Street, where the television comes on and a strange voice orders them to make sure all dogs are in open, starlit spaces by midnight.
Oh God, I hate this.
The Dalmatians accomplish this via twilight barking and thought waves.
This is like Heaven's Gate.
In Trafalgar Square, Tommy, the cats, the Dalmatians, and the general meet with thousands of other dogs to wait. At midnight, after a strange euphoric moment followed by a moment of terror, Sirius, the Lord of the Dog Star, appears on Nelson's column.
This is literally Heaven's Gate.
He explains to all the dogs that he is lonely and is offering them the chance to avoid the path of possible nuclear war in the future.
Did he come from behind the Hale-Bopp comet?
However, they must come with him of their own accord. He assures them the world, when it wakes, will not remember dogs ever existed and that all dogs will be free and know true bliss in the stars.
All dogs go to heaven.
As we all know. Pongo is chosen to make the final decision. He consults with the cabinet, Mrs. and the general. 3 stray dogs approach and tell Pongo that no, quote, lost dog wants to give up their last chance of finding special humans of their own by leaving Earth.
Oh, God.
This convinces Pongo and the others to choose their masters over Sirius. While Sirius commends their loyalty to humankind, he is sad that he will have to return to space alone. The dogs promise they will look out for him on nights when the dog star is in the sky. Sirius grants them the ability to swoosh to their own homes before daybreak, at which time everything will return to normal. Roly-Poly returns from his adventure in Paris with George. He reveals Sirius appeared there as well, and Mrs. surmises he appeared everywhere at once, as a star is not bound by earthly time. All owned dogs return home, while the lost dogs take the opportunity to get into Battersea Dog's home, where they will be fed and cared for while awaiting new owners. Pongo talks to Sirius one last time before the dawn and says someday dogs may be ready to leave Earth with him, but for now they will be content to be owned by loving humans, which for him is bliss enough.
Is this a religious allegory?
I have no clue. I don't know. Holy shit, though, right?
Hey.
Dodie Smith wrote that.
Okay. All
She-
right.
The movie had been out for 6 years. Like, already the 101 Dalmatians was in the popular culture as, like, this Disney movie.
Yeah.
And so I don't want you to think of, like, just the original book and all those characters going to this story. I want you to think of the Disney movie turning into this story.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure she was thinking that when she wrote it.
I do think it's very sweet because this is the kind of thing I would do if I was coming up with like the sort of fever dream world, is to set out some of the terms of like, don't worry, I know that they can't fend for themselves, but they're not hungry and they're not thirsty. They're okay. Like, they don't need the heat.
Yes.
They're fine. Don't worry about
You
that
got to
part.
come up with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly the same as just saying, like, Mr. Dearly was incredibly wealthy and they didn't need to worry about money.
Yeah.
Because why should you have to worry about that? That's not what the story's about. There is drama in other places.
Man, that was a lot.
That was a journey, wasn't it? Getting back, 1961, Walt Disney Studios made 101 Dalmatians. It was directed by Clyde Geronimi, Hamilton Lusk, and Wolfgang Reitherman. Wolfgang Reitherman came up when we did Robin Hood. Story by Bill Peet. This is apparently one of the only times that they ever had like one writer. Like Disney said to Bill Peet, like, you will write this movie. He really liked the screenplay and then said, okay, go storyboard and go make it. We don't have the Dearlys anymore. Now they're Roger and Anita Radcliffe.
Oh, are they not Dearly in this?
No, they're the Radcliffes.
Oh, okay. I don't think we hear that name Radcliffe.
And of
I think
course-
we just hear Roger and Anita.
Yeah, and of course, he's not like a financial wizard anymore. What's the big change we make with Roger?
He's like a jingle writer.
He writes songs.
Yeah, songs.
Which is a great way to put songs in your story.
Sure.
Classic.
Well, a classic song, Cruella de Vil.
Did you know the Sherman Brothers wrote a title song for this movie?
Yeah.
It was not used.
Oh, well, they
I'm
were past their prime, apparently.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Past their prime.
Oh, no,
This was
before their prime.
1961.
I guess prior to their prime, maybe.
They hadn't figured shit out
They
yet.
They hadn't peaked yet.
They hadn't found that Sherman Brothers magic.
That's right.
Which I find slightly questionable.
Yeah.
All the songs were by Mel Levins. So like the song Cruella de Vil, which is a fantastic song. There's two other songs. There's Dalmatian Plantation, which is
Weird.
I don't even really want to get into it. But he wrote like a jingle for it too. It's not like a musical, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's 101 Dalmatians. You've all seen it.
The
right?
music is really, the music is diegetic, right? Like
Yes.
it's Roger singing the songs that he wrote in his role as someone who writes songs.
Yeah. I guess let me kind of pause for a second. Let me slow things down because that's like a lot of background on it. It's a movie that I'm assuming everyone has seen, whether it was one of your favorites or not. It's 101 Dalmatians, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't watched it, like really watched it in, I'm going to say 25 years.
Yeah.
We did maybe a year and a half ago when Calvin was really little. You went through a little project.
Oh,
like when
yeah.
Disney Plus first came out.
Yeah. I mean, I was still on maternity leave, and I was like, I'm just gonna watch every Disney movie,
Like
So
the animated
all
ones.
the animated ones. So I think I started with like Steamboat Willie, and I like watched, or no, I started with Snow White.
Yeah.
All the feature length movies. So I started with Snow White, Cinderella. Like I just watched all of them all the way through.
Do you remember where you stopped?
I do.
Where'd you stop?
Bolt,
Yeah?
couldn't get past it.
Why not?
I found it upsetting.
Dog in Peril?
Dog in Peril.
Lost Dog?
Lost Dog.
Here's the thing, Bolt's pretty good.
Okay.
I'm one of those people, I think Bolt's pretty
I
good.
mean, I made it through Brother Bear. I made it through, what was the one with the cows?
Home on the Range?
Home on the Range, which was really bad. But I couldn't make it through Bolt. I couldn't do it.
Well, it upset you too much.
It upset me. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I was home on maternity. I mean, you remember my reaction to the first scene of like Tarzan? Like I literally almost died.
Well, you had your little new baby with you.
Yeah. I was suffering from some postpartum anxiety. It was too much for
I mean,
me.
say what you will about Tarzan, but the first 20 minutes are the most amazing Phil Collins music video of all time.
I don't
and
disagree.
it should have just been that.
Anyway, 101 Dalmatians.
It's like I liked it when I was a kid. I never had any beef with 101 Dalmatians. So the last time I like watched it was when I was a kid. I remember it being on when you were going through your project, but I wasn't really paying that close attention to it. So it was weird to sit down as like an adult going, I'm watching this with a critical eye to talk about it to other people. And I've probably never watched it this closely in my entire life.
Yeah.
This is a very good movie.
It's very good. I mean, the relationship to the book, other than like the big changes, like they sort of merged Mrs. and Perdita.
Mhm.
Roger has a different job, but other than that, there's not
Like,
it's pretty spot on to the get it. It's pretty close. It hews pretty closely to the book, which I only say not because it's a good or a bad thing, but because it's a Disney movie and they don't change that much, which I think is unusual for a Disney animated feature.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a textbook example of an adaptation that streamlines the source material.
Yeah.
Like it adds nothing, it just streamlines. It's just like, how can we combine things? How can we make it quicker? It does make some changes in the pacing of the story. Like I said in the book, the story really follows Pongo and Mrs. the entire time. This one, we get to see their story a bit, and like they get to Hell Hall and they help all the puppies escape.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's Sergeant Tibbs. It's the cat who helps them all escape.
Yeah.
Like there's already an operation to get the puppies out of Hell Hall, and it's after that they reunite with their parents.
Yeah.
So they're not as active in this one.
And we don't see as much of like all the characters they meet along the way. Like that's very streamlined. They just sort of leave and suddenly they're there.
Yeah, there's like no characters they meet on the way.
Yeah.
I guess here are the things that like jumped out at me like right off the bat. And I know this is a silly thing to say about a Disney movie from this era. The animation is very, very good.
It's very, very good.
But like specifically the dog animation.
Yeah.
Like, the people animation, actually, people animation is fine.
It's fine.
Except for Jasper. Jasper and Cruella.
Yeah.
Jasper and Cruella are amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what, like Horace didn't really do much for me, but Jasper was like maybe one of my favorite animated characters of all time.
Yeah.
To be clear, the tall, thin, henchman.
Yes,
not the short,
stout one.
The C-3PO, not the R2-D2.
Sure.
Because short, tall and thin and short and stout is a classic combo.
Classic combo.
But the dog animation is incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean they clearly studied dogs.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like a classic clip. I think it must be a documentary of like the making of The Lion King.
Mm-hmm.
But like seeing someone walk a lion into the studio and the animators all sitting there like kind of taking notes on how the lion moved and walked and yawned and everything. I think they must have done that with dogs because it's very true to life how dogs yawn and scratch themselves and sit and run. It's weird to say they don't look like animated dogs because, of course, they're animated dogs. They don't look like cartoon dogs. They look like animations of real dogs.
I mean, here, let me put it this way. It's like, how a caricature is it's a caricature. It's exaggerated, but everything in a caricature is exaggerated from reality.
Yeah.
Like it looks more, here's the thing, a caricature of Sylvester Stallone looks more like Sylvester Stallone than Sylvester Stallone does.
Sure.
Like Pongo at the beginning of this movie looks more like a Dalmatian than a real Dalmatian.
Yeah.
He evokes real dog in a way that a real dog doesn't do that.
Yes.
One of the cool things that I love about animated movies is that in terms of the actual craft of it is not every single time, but usually the first time you're ever seeing a character, especially one of the main characters, that's almost always one of the last things that was animated because they don't want to start with them not having figured out how they're going to animate the character.
Okay.
Usually they start with the stuff that matters less. So like characters in wide shots from the middle of the movie, things like that. And then usually it's like the head animators or the best animators going back by the end of the movie after they've figured out exactly how they're rendering these characters. They go back and they do the first iteration of the character.
Okay.
The first time you see them. So like Pongo in this movie is in his very first shot while he's like yawning and scratching himself. It is so beautifully rendered in a way that almost nothing is for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
But then there's that great thing that is like kind of shitty we'll get to that, where he's like looking out the window and looking at all the other dogs that look like their owners because he's thinking in terms of who can I try to hook my master up with and where's a dog for me? She's too old, she's too fat, she's too bespectacled.
Yeah.
What did I turn to you and say? Like one day our kid is going to be old enough that I'm going to have to explain to him you don't judge a book by its cover, but then I'm going to show him this movie.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to explain, well, here it's different.
Man, I saw someone walking down the street the other day. You know how usually like the stereotype of like a person who looks like a dog, their dog is like that person's kind of like dumpy and unattractive and weird looking.
Uh-huh.
I saw a person walking down the street the other day that looked like their dog who was so cool. She had like a golden doodle, like the curly blonde hair, and she just had this cool shaved sides with this like curly blonde hair on the top. And so like she had dark skin, but her hair was like blonde and she was so cool looking. Her dog was so cool looking. And I just thought, wow, that's like bringing looking like your dog sort of into the modern era. Looking like your dog for hipsters.
Totally.
Yeah.
But like the animation's great.
Yeah.
Roger got a demotion. I'm just kind of going through my notes here right now. You jump in whenever you want to.
Yeah.
Because Cruella, like we haven't even talked about her, but she is beautifully rendered as well. Like she's a villain for the ages.
I mean, one of the things I loved in this movie, in the book, like she kind of makes fun of Roger, but she's very specific about it. Like she doesn't like certain things that he does. I don't know. In this one, I just love that Cruella hates Roger so much, but for no reason. She just hates him and thinks he's stupid. Like a Disney character can be evil, but like this is contempt, and that's a very adult emotion. And I was here for, like, I just thought it was really, really funny how much she hated Roger. She was just like, Shut up, Roger.
I
You're
feel
awful.
I love what you're talking about because I feel like there are Disney villains that I loved when I was a kid. Love to hate, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And as I've gotten older, I certainly view them differently. And I'm not saying there are any that I don't like now that I'm a grown up, because they're all for kids anyway. But there are some that just don't resonate as much with me. So
Yeah.
when I was a kid, Gaston, he's a heck of a villain.
Yes.
Right? As an adult, Gaston's fine, but nothing about him sticks with me in any way, or Ursula or something like that. But the villains that stick with me that I love are Cruella de Vil.
Yep.
And Yzma
Yeah.
from The Emperor's New Groove.
Which, it's funny because I was thinking that in terms of their character design, they're actually kind of similar.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? I would throw Ursula in here as well, because the thing that's so great about these three women is just how fucking confident they are.
Yeah. And how stupid they think everybody else is.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
They're three incredible characters. Remember that movie, what is it, Tea with the Dames?
Yeah.
Can you tell people about that for people who don't know?
Oh, it's like a documentary, and I don't know how manufactured this is. So the story goes, these ladies who are dames of the British theater, stage and screen, get together every so often because they're actually friends and have tea.
So who is it?
It's Maggie Smith, Joan Plowright, Eileen Atkins, and Judi Dench. And I don't know if that story is true, but so the story goes, they just sort of plopped the camera down and had a conversation. And I watched this movie, and it was just great. What I'm
saying is, I want Tea with the Dames, but I want Cruella de Vil, Yzma, and Ursula.
Yes.
But Yzma after she's a cat, because that's Emperor's New Groove is amazing.
Yeah,
it's my favorite Disney movie of all time. I love it so much. Cruella's amazing.
Yeah.
She's so good.
Yeah.
And the thing I love too, going along with what you're saying, not only does she hate Roger hates her.
He hates her.
It's incredible. The way he just does not give a shit about what she thinks and is just I'm going to make fun of you to your face.
Yeah.
I don't even care. I'm going to sit in the other room and play my instruments as loud as I can just because I know it annoys you.
Yeah.
I love their relationship, and I love that Anita is just I'm going to be the only goddamn adult in this entire situation.
Yep.
They're great. Getting back to Pongo for a second, this is one of those things that I didn't appreciate when I saw the movie without having read the book, but I really appreciate how they never go out of their way to say how Pongo is an incredibly smart dog, but they bring in a lot of his traits from the book of him being an incredibly smart dog.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Pongo in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I could have seen more of, and that I think actually really lends itself to a cartoon or an animated, rendering, is the way that the message is passed. It's like the beacons of Gondor are lit. It has to be passed from one dog to another. And they have, as you mentioned, they have this thing called the Twilight Barking, where the message is passed, from dog to dog to dog to dog to get all the way to London. And I think that would have been very cool to show. They did a little bit. But it is so epic the way, it could have been such an epic shot of all of these different dogs of all different shapes and sizes, passing this message along.
I mean, you couldn't have said in 1961, you know how when they light the beacon?
Yeah.
And, and then Gondor calls for aid.
Gondor calls for aid.
They didn't have that context at the time.
Right.
Because I'm specifically referencing the movie. I'm not referencing the novel.
Right,
I'm referencing, Viggo
Which
Mortensen.
had only just come out.
Yeah.
So.
I'm referencing that.
We had a really sweet person, by the way, on our Facebook page. We had called ourselves old because we remembered when something came out. Oh, because we remembered when Lord of the Rings came out, the movie came out, and he was like, I remember when the books came out. So shut your mouths.
Yep.
And
in a sweet way.
In a sweet way. No, I thought it was so sweet. It was a really fun comment.
It should feel epic like that. Which, if it was being made now, I would say no, we need to make it. It needs to be the beacons of Gondor.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really happen in the movie.
Yeah.
But the movie's very streamlined. I mean, it's an 80-minute kids movie.
Yeah.
So they're not going to do stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I find that most unrealistic of anything that happens in the movie, including them buying a Dalmatian plantation at the end, is that they're just no, we're just going to have 17 dogs in our London apartment. No, that's fine. They had 15 puppies. No, we're keeping them all. But you can't, literally impossible.
But it's a kid's movie.
I know,
it doesn't matter.
I know.
Here's the thing. If the movie isn't actively bringing up the question of whether that's realistic, I am easily not going to think about it.
Yeah.
The only thing that would make me think about it is if they brought it up.
Yeah, which they don't.
Which I don't want them to, because why would you bring that up in the course of a kid's movie?
They bring it, but the thing that I'm making the distinction between 15 dogs or 17 dogs, not too many.
Yeah.
Suddenly they have 101 dogs. No, that's too many. That's too many. We gotta
Okay.
move. We gotta move out to the country if we're gonna have 101 dogs. Which again, Dalmatian plantation.
One scene I do want to call out particularly that like I always remembered, but it was really nice watching now. It makes me think of when we did The Borrowers. Because it's rare that we get to talk about like Miyazaki
Yeah.
and the Studio Ghibli movies, but the things that's so good about those is that like unlike kind of Western animation, there are quiet moments.
Yeah.
I feel like quiet moments just don't really exist in like Disney movies.
Yeah.
This movie has such a beautiful quiet moment because it's the scene with in this movie it's Lucky.
Yeah.
Where like, oh, we lost a puppy. That whole scene feels like it goes on for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Where it is just this beautiful, quiet moment. There's no score trying to tell you how to feel.
Like sad music. It's not afraid to take its time.
Yeah. The only thing we get is some really, really subtle character animation, really good sound design of just Roger and Pongo with the dead puppy.
Yeah.
Before Roger says, well, let me try this. And he, rubs it and tries to get it back awake and it does wake up. But it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that I never appreciated when I was a kid. And now that's like my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah.
It was not what I expected. It was beautiful and thoughtful and slow and methodical in a way that I was not expecting. And I loved it.
I think it's unusual in a modern animated movie to have a scene that takes that much time to just kind of breathe and be silent.
And be sad.
And be sad.
Like, let's all be sad.
I mean, Pixar does it, I think. But
yeah.
But not your basic, kids animated movie.
Something about it though is like not having score to me like really is what pushed it into being something special and memorable.
Because you could have had a really, really sappy score easily underneath that scene, and it was just silent.
Oh, and the nannies. Just one nanny now.
Oh, just one nanny. Yeah, we lost Nanny Butler's wife.
It's so frustrating.
It's unfortunate.
I desperately want there to be a version with the two of them as a couple. But
maybe there'll be a spinoff.
I love that there was more stuff from the book that was in the movie than I expected. Like there's a thing where Jasper and Horace, again, Jasper is one of the most amazing animated characters I've ever seen, where they're watching What's My Crime, the game show, which is like described in detail in the book, like and how the show functions.
If you've seen old clips of What's My Line, that's what it is. Like when they have them write their name like on the chalkboard. That's I didn't actually understand that from the book, but when they were doing it on the show, like the parody of it, I was like, oh, I visually have seen this before.
But like the fact that they actually kept that in the movie, I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah,
I kind of loved that.
That's kind of like the old Disney version of having like a joke in there for adults.
Oh, and speaking of jokes for adults, maybe we could end on this one right now. When all of the 100 Dalmatians come back and Roger says to Pongo, you old rascal. I definitely didn't get that when I was a kid.
The
Did
Disney
not
movie,
understand that at all.
The Disney movie like almost more sexually explicit than the book, which again, rare.
Like, is it okay because it's dogs?
I think it. Well, I really want to move into the live action movie because I have a lot to say about dog gender and sexuality.
Gotcha. So I want to be clear, the only thing we have left to talk about is the 1996 adaptation. There was 102 Dalmatians, there was Cruella, there were multiple like animated sequels that Disney did and TV shows. We really just wanted to keep to this story, so those didn't feel relevant. So I want everyone to know at this point we're just going to talk about the new movie and then that will be it.
Yeah.
So in 1996, Disney decided to do what I know is going to sound weird. They decided to do a live-action remake of one of their cartoons.
Yeah, they never do that. What are you talking about?
I don't know how we're going to handle all these live-action remakes.
We're going to have to figure this out.
I don't know if they're going to be their own thing or if we're just going to handle them one at a time when we deal with these different properties. But anyway, I feel like this 101 Dalmatians is a little separate from all of those because I feel like Disney did this one and then a number of years went by before this like latest decade of giant live action remakes came out.
Yeah, like this would be one of the first, I suppose.
I think it is the first.
You might say, because I can't think of another one. God, I want them to do Snow White. That would be so crazy.
It would be crazy.
Yeah.
It has some things going for it and it has some things not going for it.
Yeah.
So here's the thing it has going for it. It is directed by Stephen Herrick, who, like, I'm not going to say he's like one of my favorite directors, but here's a number of things that he's done that I think are of note. He directed Critters, which I really enjoyed when I was younger.
Okay.
Critters is a fun movie. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Okay.
Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Okay.
The Mighty Ducks.
Okay.
The Three Musketeers.
Oh, okay.
Let's be clear.
It's like one of my favorite movies.
The Chris O'Donnell Three Musketeers.
It's like literally, I want to do the Three Musketeers, which is 1,000,000 pages long and has 1,000,000 adaptations, just so we can watch this movie.
I agree with you. Mr. Holland's Opus. Another movie this guy did. So this, like, the 80s and 90s were kind of a big time for this guy.
They were good to him.
You know, very good to him. So he directed it. The guy knows how to make a fun movie. But it was written by John Hughes. And what, like, I was talking.
He's got a bad track record. I guess he doesn't do adaptation well, maybe?
It's so weird to me that John Hughes is two things. He is The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller and Pretty in Pink. That's one John Hughes.
Yeah.
But then there's the other John Hughes, which is like
Miracle on 34th Street.
Flubber, this. Even Home Alone I'm putting in with those as well. Like, Home Alone is a weird movie. Home Alone doesn't fit with those other ones. I feel like he just hit this thing in the 90s where he's like, I'm going to write movies for kids that are... I don't know if he felt like, oh, they need to evoke the kind of things I remember when I was a kid, where like the hero is very, very good and the villains are absolutely evil and arch and also get physically fucked up the entire time.
Yeah.
Like Home Alone's I guess is the version that works. But then the thing we saw in all of them is that like they all just kind of follow the same formula.
Yeah.
And 101 Dalmatians is basically it's no different. Can I throw something out there?
Sure.
If we're only judging John Hughes by his track record on this show, John Hughes is not very good.
Yeah.
That being said, I do think Miracle on 34th Street was like the worst thing we saw that he wrote. Flubber was a little bit better. This is definitely the best of the three.
Yeah, I think you came down in the end a little more positively than I did on this one.
I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in it that I didn't like, but I kind of liked it.
I think this is the kind of thing that we talk about all the time, that you're like, I kind of liked it. I'm at like a 55, and I'm like, I kind of didn't like it. I'm at like a 48. You know what I mean? We're just on either side of the line.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to just say who's in it real quick, and then I'll jump into the things I want to talk about?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, Glenn Close is like the one everyone remembers. She plays Cruella de Vil, and boy, does she play Cruella de Vil.
Man.
I actually don't really have a problem with her performance, now that I think about it.
I mean, like, she's over the top, but the movie's over the top.
Like, does Glenn Close ever bring anything less than 100%?
No, and it doesn't always work because she's always at 106%, and sometimes she's in a different movie. And in this one, like, you know, luckily she's there to carry the movie, so they all have to sort of fall in line behind her.
Yeah, she's in the right movie. We've got our Roger and our Anita. They are the Dearleys again, because this is an adaptation of the Disney movie. Jeff Daniels and Jolie Richardson. Yeah, they're fine, but we'll get into it. Joan Plowright, one of the dames.
Yeah.
Is Nanny.
Bless her. I looked up to make sure she was still alive. She's 91 years old, and
Yep.
I believe totally blind.
Which,
but she's doing great.
Huge bummer. Thanks, sweetie.
Sorry.
Hugh Laurie and Mark Williams are Jasper and Horace. Really, it's always great seeing a pre-house Hugh Laurie. I always do enjoy it. And yeah, there we go. And then a whole bunch. You know what I don't have?
A whole bunch of dogs.
I don't have a list of like voice actors doing the voices for all the animals, because the animals don't talk, and I'm so happy about it.
Not even in their heads. They're just dogs.
I'm so happy about it. They're dogs and horses and cats, and that's it. And they don't talk, and it's beautiful.
It's great. I mean, I had so many thoughts about the nature of gender dogs in this, because the scene where Pongo is like watching women walk by with their dogs and evaluating them as like wives for himself and Roger,
like in the original Disney one.
Well, it is in the original Disney one, but it's also in this one.
Yeah,
and it is so interesting because when you animate a dog that you want to read as a lady dog, there are lots of feminine things you can do to make the dog seem feminine that the viewer doesn't even really think about. It's like, oh, that's a lady dog. Yeah, there's a man dog and there's a lady dog. But in this, because it's actual dogs, and dogs don't have gender, like dogs have a sex, but dogs don't have gender, because gender is a social construct and dogs don't understand that.
A human social construct.
A human social construct. You know, so he's watching all these dogs walk by with their mistresses, and it's like, oh no, it's just a dog. I don't know if that's a girl dog or a boy dog. It's just a dog. Our dog just wandered in because he's like, why are you speaking
hello,
to me?
Hello, I'm here.
And then so then the other thing, in terms of the actual logistical casting of these dogs, especially because they're Dalmatians, so their parts are visible. It's just weird that you have to cast dogs based on their genitals, right?
Yeah.
Like, they had to have a boy dog playing Pongo and a girl dog playing Perdita because you can see their junk on screen. And there's even a joke where the dogs get mixed up and like Roger's taking the wrong dog away and Anita has to run after him and like strike him and like, give me my dog back. And he's like, lady, what are you talking about? This is my dog. Oh, I didn't realize there were 2 Dalmatians. I'm sorry. And he actually like lifts up the hind leg like to check like between the legs. And he's like, oh, that's not my dog. My dog's a boy. It's just funny how at once it is both so much less gendered and so much more gendered because the dogs have real dog genitals that you have to acknowledge it, that you don't have to worry about in a cartoon. I don't know. It was odd for me.
There's a whole aspect to it that's entertaining to me, that there is, if these movies are designed for the lowest common denominator kind of thing, like they're designed for families.
Yeah.
We don't want to offend people. There is kind of a puritanical thing that they're designed for where we don't want to make people feel icky about like human sexuality.
Yeah.
Because we don't want people to think about that kind of stuff, because we don't want kids to think about sex, and we certainly don't want to talk about anything that isn't just like heteronormative or anything like that, because we don't want to offend people.
God forbid.
Right. But that's kind of a standard. 2021 we're finally starting to move away from that a little bit, but like this is 25 years ago, and it's not like things in the 90s were perfect with that. So there's that aspect to it. But there's also a whole part of that kind of conservative family unit, that hypothetical conservative family unit that this is being designed for, where like, oh no, people have dogs and people have animals and animals have sex and dogs have puppies. That's a thing we all know about.
We all know about
there
that.
Is like, it seems to be so comfortable talking about like dogs' genitals, where it absolutely would not be cool with you saying anything that made you think about people's genitals.
Well,
even though the people do get pregnant.
The people do get pregnant, which again, like unclear how she got pregnant. They also like get married like the evening that they meet, and I'm just like screaming at the screen like, you just met. Like even in the cartoon they take longer to get married.
I know this is gonna sound crazy. I don't think John Hughes knows how to write people.
Just dogs.
I don't know. There's nothing that rang true or it was identifiable, but anything that happened in Anita and Roger's relationship at all was ridiculous.
No, I was just like screaming at the screen like, you just met. So, okay. There's a lot to talk about. So a couple things that they did to sort of try to modernize the relationships in this. So Cruella's not just a friend of Anita's like from her school days. Anita and Roger both have jobs, both written in sort of that 90s style, completely unrealistic style, written by people who have never had a job a day in their life and don't know really what it looks like to go to the office every day.
Yeah.
Because Anita's like a fashion designer, I guess, for Cruella. Like Cruella is kind of like,
she's a fashion magnate.
She's like a fashion magnate, but like the clothes that they're designing are for her to wear. So that part was confusing. Like at one point, Anita was designing something and she's like, well, this is for you to wear to, the such and such ball.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I don't know. It's not like for the runway. It's for Cruella to wear.
It just seems like it all comes from a thing of like, I'm going to write professions, but do no research about how those professions work.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the video game development in a second. I just want to stay on Anita for a minute here. Anita has this really unrealistic job. And then at one point she takes some leave and Cruella comes to the house and says like, I really miss it. It's like this. It everything comes back around because she's like, I miss the interaction of you being in the office. It's like, oh, Cruella, don't we all?
Yeah.
But
she sounded like every boss who's like, no, you all need to come back to the office because this is how we need to function. And everyone else is saying like, no, I'm actually working pretty well at home, actually.
But she's like taking leave. And so Cruella comes back and says like, I want you to come back to work. And Anita's like, oh, but I have been working just like from home. It's like, well, but are you on leave or are you not? And also she's pregnant, but also it's weird. So
Roger tells Cruella about the pregnancy
like way too early, and it's very strange.
She should have left him.
And like Cruella hates Roger.
I kind of hated Roger.
But here's the thing I want to talk about. So at the beginning of the movie, Anita's watching television with her dog, and the news is on, and someone has like stolen the rare white Siberian tiger from the London Zoo. Oh, for its skin. Yeah, because they left the tiger behind. They just took the skin.
Didn't steal the tiger. They just took the skin.
Murdered an endangered tiger. Like a horrible. And it's almost played for laughs a little bit, but like horrible if that happened, right? Like mind-bogglingly horrible if that happened. And Anita's watching the TV and eating her cereal and going, "My God, who would do such a thing?" And then you see her go to work with her boss,
Who is a cartoon villain.
who's a cartoon villain draped in exotic furs. And she's going, I just don't know who could possibly do such a thing. And of course, like you do actually see the tiger skin, which I found very upsetting because the head was still on it. And it was like, again, kind of played for comedy, but like in the real world, I think it would be incredibly upsetting to see somebody handling the skin of an endangered white tiger that they had murdered. But Anita's still like, I don't know who could possibly have killed that tiger. Wow, what a strange, what a heck of a thing. And it takes her to the end of the movie to be like, oh, I know who stole the puppies. The woman that wanted a puppy coat. Imagine that.
I mean, I feel like you're only scratching the surface right now.
Of how stupid Anita is.
Anita's a fucking idiot in this movie. She's so dumb all the time about everything.
Yeah. And like any one of these things doesn't sound that bad and sounds nitpicky as I'm saying, like, I really wish there was more realism in this Disney movie. But taken all together, I just found it made the character hard to watch. There's one point where she and Nanny Butler are sitting and talking about how the dog is going to have puppies. And the nanny is like, "Oh my God, you have this glow. I think are you pregnant?" And she like faints. And then the next thing you see is as her, Anita, at the OB's office and Perdita at the vet's office, both being told they're going to have puppies. And it's like this thing where, you know, you're trying to create sort of a false equivalency with the fathers, like the expectant fathers. So like Pongo's sitting outside because they didn't let him into the vet, but Roger's sitting outside because they didn't let him into the OB's office, I guess. And they walk away. And again, she's just found out she's pregnant. This is like the visit to confirm that she's pregnant. And they're walking away. And Roger goes like, "Oh, how did it go? Is everything okay?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, everything's fine. The baby's nice and big." No, it fucking is not. The baby's nice and big.
I mean, I feel like, can I just pull it back for a second?
Yeah.
We wouldn't even be talking about this stuff, but John Hughes had to introduce it into the story.
Right. Why does she have to be pregnant at all?
Like it's not necessary.
He's drawing this parallel that doesn't need to be there and is dumb and doesn't work. That's what I have to say.
And he does it with something else too, because I was talking before about their financial stability. Like, it doesn't matter if he does stuff for the government. It doesn't matter if he is a songwriter. At no point in the movie are they ever like struggling, because that's not the point. They're not the main characters. The main characters are Pongo and Perdita, or Pongo and Mrs., right?
Yeah.
It's the dogs that are the main characters. I don't care what their financial situation is. It doesn't matter. But in this one, they have to have very serious conversations about whether they can have all these puppies with them, whether they can make it work on his salary as a wannabe video game developer.
As some sort of renegade video game develop. This is not how it works.
Independent video game creation, where you go to...
You develop an entire game, and
Yep.
then you go to the studio and you pitch it to the studio head's 10-year-old son.
Yeah, and then they buy it from you.
Yeah.
Which is not how anything works.
It's not how anything works. Also, the video game is not a video game.
It's just animated. It's like the original animation style of 101 Dalmatians.
Yes.
The only thing that made me okay with it is that, and only a little okay with it, is that the kid, the 10-year-old kid that you're talking about that needs to like play the game, and well, if he's not impressed with it, they don't buy it.
Yeah.
Right? He was super cute.
Yeah, but I didn't like.
He was like a really cute British kid.
He was cute, but like he was given shitty lines to say. Like at one point, he was like, "Ugh, even girls won't like this game." And
Yeah,
I was
no,
like,
that was...
Fuck you.
Yeah, that was not great.
Yeah.
I will agree with that. But it just... The movie didn't need these things.
Yeah.
The movie could have just been focused on the dogs,
You
and it would
notice
have been
we
fine.
haven't mentioned the plot yet because we got so caught up in all of this nonsense. Okay. The plot is the same.
Why did I write down Anita, leave this man? Oh, it's because he said the thing about the pregnancy. Yeah, Cruella comes to visit them, and he says, like, we're having a baby. And, like, it is too early to tell anybody. And why would you tell Cruella?
Yeah.
Why the fuck would you tell Cruella?
So anyway, they do the same thing. The puppies get stolen. They lock Nanny Butler in the cupboard, which is more scary when it's a real person, like, actually, like, reliving this trauma that she had, that these burglars came and locked her in the cupboard. Like, that's awful.
Yeah, like I never thought during the animated one that she was going to have like PTSD later about what happened, but in this one,
just seeing Joan Plowright go, I screamed and screamed and no one ever came. It's like, oh God, that's
like,
awful.
I feel like in the cartoon they like trick her into going into a room and then lock the door behind her, but in this one they like actually physically restrain her and shove her into a closet and
Yeah.
lock her in?
So it's Hugh Laurie and
Mark Williams.
Mark Williams. And very early on, you said they're going to give these guys the full Home Alone, the full Wet Bandits treatment.
Oh, yeah.
And sure enough, they did.
Well, they get like generally injured.
Yeah.
Like just general kind of like beat up, that kind of thing. They fall down a lot.
Yeah, but it's not the dogs doing it. You thought it was going to be like the dogs being clever and setting traps for them. And
That's what I thought.
That didn't really happen. It was just them sort of tripping over their own thing. And at one point, like, Mark Williams falls in the pond.
Horse freezes to death.
And then he's like crawling out, and then he just like freezes. And I turned to you and I was like, did he just die?
I think he just died.
I think we're not going to see him again because he's dead. And then, of course, he's not dead, but like it's very dark.
They get lit on fire.
Yeah.
They get electrocuted.
They fall off things.
It's pretty awful what happens to them.
Yeah, they get their balls electrocuted.
Yes.
On an electric fence at one point.
They fall down on an electric fence. And
Yeah.
and I just remember watching this going like, what they're asking Hugh Laurie to do right now is beneath him.
Yeah.
But he's a professional.
Yeah.
And the pay is good.
Yeah. Why did I just write, oh, God?
I don't know.
I don't know what that was about.
What could that possibly be about?
It could be about so many things.
Was it about anything that happened to Cruella in the barn?
I mean, she gets covered in shit.
And it all happens to Cruella, too. Because there's this whole... So, like, in the animated version, the whole thing is Cruella's chasing them. The whole third act is they are being chased by Cruella through the British countryside. And they finally are in a town, and they escape her by rolling around in soot, so she thinks they're a whole bunch of, black dog, Labradors instead of Dalmatians. And they escape from her, and then while she's driving on the snowy road, she, Jasper and Horse crash into her, and they get knocked off the road. I don't know why. For whatever reason, in my head, she died. When I was a kid and I saw it, she dies in a fiery wreck, and then watching it again, I'm like, oh, she's just in a snowbank.
Yeah.
I guess everything's fine. I don't know why I remembered it that way. In this one, though, there is a whole third act action scene all in the barn where the puppies are waiting.
Yeah.
And she finds the barn and so she gets the Home Alone treatment, and it's all the barn animals doing it to her, not the dogs.
Right.
So she falls from great heights, falls into vats of molasses. She's wading through shit.
I think maybe that was my oh God, that she was she was clearly drowning. Like there was this film of molasses over her face, so she obviously couldn't breathe, and it was very disturbing.
Yeah, it was real messed up.
It was messed up.
Do you know what's even more messed up though?
What's that?
While all the puppies are watching TV early on in the movie, what are they watching? First of all, they're watching the Aristocats. That's fine. That's not my problem. Then they're watching Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey. And it's the scene where Shadow comes over the hill. You don't know if Shadow's going to come over because you don't know if he made it. But then he comes over and the little boy goes, Shadow. And that's the scene that they're watching. And I didn't need that. I didn't need that at all in the middle of this movie. Also, Homeward Bound only came out a couple of years before that. It's really, this is contemporaneous at this point.
Yeah.
Homeward Bound's great, and I will never watch it again in my whole life.
So anyway, we spend even less time on Pongo and Perdita's journey. We spend a lot of time beating up the burglars in the house, and then we don't spend a lot of time on their journey back to London. The police kind of find them pretty soon, and they radio for Roger and Anita to come and meet them in this village where they've got all the dogs in the cars. And this two things about this. One, the guy playing the police captain is so proud because he gets the title line of the movie. So
how many Dalmatians are there?
He's on the radio and he's like, Madam, we have 101 Dalmatians. And the actor is clearly so happy.
And if he had only looked at the camera, it would have made it fantastic.
I would have made it amazing. And then, okay, the ending, I don't know why.
This was the 6th highest grossing movie of 1996. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. It just seems like everything has to be, there's a lot of extraneous detail in this, I think, that is over-explained. And as you pointed out, if they weren't going to great lengths to explain it and just did it and were confident, you wouldn't question it. But because they're adding all of this weird detail, it bogs you down.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, so they bring the dogs home. Roger and Anita are very happy. They're like, okay, we've got our 2 dogs and our 15 puppies back. And suddenly they ask, what's going to happen to the rest of them? And the police officer gets this really sad look on his face, and he's like, well, I mean, none of them have homes. They're going to have to go to the pound. And everyone gets really sad, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. highly adoptable purebred Dalmatian puppies are going to have to go to the pound in a very public, like, animal hoarder rescue situation. You don't think these dogs are going to be adoptable? Like, they're going to go to the pound. They're not going to be murdered in the pound. They're going to be adopted by families who only want 1 or 2 dogs. And so Roger and Anita
It's
are
very
like,
sweet that you think that, sweetie.
Roger and Anita are purebred puppies are going to be are going to be adopted.
Okay.
Like, it's going to be okay. And so Roger and Anita are like, well, I guess we'll have to take them all in. All 101 puppies into our small London apartment. That's just, I guess that's just how it's going to have to be. And then they get Hell Hall and they decorate it like Dalmatians or whatever.
Is it Hell Hall? Or is it just an estate?
It's not named. I don't think it's named in either of the movies as Hell Hall.
No, it's named as Hell Hall.
In the animated one, it is?
In both of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
but
so
I think the estate they move into later at the end of the movie, I don't think it's Hell Hall.
Again, the bogged down in details does not matter.
But this is the thing, like, none of this stuff matters. Like, the things that matter in a movie like this are, what are the characters like? What are their relationships? What's the conflict between the characters? What do they want? That kind of stuff. Like, can I throw out an example of a movie that's kind of the perfect opposite of this?
Sure.
The Paddington movies.
Okay.
Because you still haven't seen them,
No.
right? They're wonderful. Like, the Paddington movies are great. If you haven't seen them, run, don't walk. They fit the tone that this is going for. They are movies for kids. They also appeal to grown-ups. They just exist in a kind of a fantastical world where the story is for kids, where you don't really get bogged down in detail that only an adult would tell an adult they need to care about.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of stuff that's in there. What's important is the characters and the relationships with each other. This movie doesn't get that, and it gets it better than like Flubber and Miracle on 34th Street. I still think it's better.
Yeah.
But it still is just bogged down with that kind of stuff. I don't understand how to do something that isn't 2 or 3 hours long. How do we do this?
Let's just wrap it up.
Are we done?
Yeah, we're done.
But okay, so maybe we should do some quadrants really quickly.
Let's do it.
101 Dalmatians, 1961. Do you think they cared about the source material?
I do.
I think so too.
I do, yes.
Was it successful?
Yes, it was.
And we found out it was really successful.
That's good.
1996. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No, absolutely
Was
not.
there anything from
No.
the book that made its way to the movie?
No, not even like fun, not even like cute little nods. Like, I don't think they read the book.
It doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
Was it successful?
No.
I'm gonna disagree with you.
No.
I think yes.
I think no.
I think I have a lot of problems with it, but like again, I think we might have to put it on the line.
Unfortunately, we are divided.
I didn't hate this one. This one I genuinely laughed at multiple times,
Yeah.
and that's not something I can say for like Miracle on 34th Street
Sure,
or
sure.
even Flubber,
That's
which
fair.
bums me out.
That's all right.
Okay, I guess we'll agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree.
How fun is it to just do like a little episode
Just-
like this?
Yeah,
This is
a
delightful.
little hour and a half long episode.
Well, this has been Adapter Parish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, as we talked about before, we're on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to our bonus show, our patron-only Slack community. It's a lot of fun. Details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
And so when the Dearleys and the Pongos got back from their joint honeymoon, there were Nanny Cook and Nanny Butler fully trained, ready to welcome them into the little house facing Regent's Park. It came as something of a shock that Nanny Butler was wearing trousers. Wouldn't a black dress with a nice frilly apron be better, suggested Mrs. Dearly, rather nervously because Nanny Butler had never been her nanny. You can't be a butler without trousers, said Nanny Butler firmly, but I'll get a frilly apron tomorrow. It will add a note of originality. It did.
I love them so much.
They're so sweet.